spelling, which I will mention again at the end. And Real Spelling just is a resource that supports the development of word inquiry, but you don't need the resource to do it. You can just get started with the free stuff. So we think about word inquiry in this way, that the primary function of English spelling is to represent meaning. So we're always approaching it from a perspective of meaning making, rather than just learning how to spell the words by sounding out the letters or sounds in them. We're thinking about the meaning of the word, okay? That might be a mind shift for some people. But when you approach it from a meaning making kind of way, that's really, really helpful. Particularly, I've worked a lot with EAL learners, and they get very interested in this because it's not, to them, it's not just random sounds anymore. They start to see connections. And you'll see that when we come up to do the word matrix, okay? And Pete Bowers will argue, and I've sometimes written him emails and said, this doesn't make any sense. And he would patiently explain to me why it does. But he says, English appears to not have rules, but you can actually find rules. And part of the word inquiry is having the children hypothesize and come up with the rules themselves. Okay, so we're thinking about English spelling and word building as, and I'm sure this works in Spanish and French as well, but I just haven't investigated it. But we're thinking about it as a scientific process, something that we can make meaning of and we can make sense of. Okay, so just going to pause because that's a lot. What benefits might this kind of thinking have for your particular learners? Just pop up in the chat what you're thinking just now. Or if you have any questions at this point. I like that, Lupita. They might be able to make connections to their own language. And when you look at the base and you look where the word's coming from, and a lot of the words come out of Latin and Greek, it's really helpful. Sometimes our words come from Proto-Indo-European, which is actually related to Hindi. So yeah, that's a really good point. Okay. And yes, Deanna, finding patterns, but you'll see they're quite different patterns than the patterns you might be traditionally used to. Okay. So hoping that you will find this useful and make connections. So this is the structure that we use when we're thinking about word inquiry. Okay. We're thinking about the meaning. What does the word mean? The structure, how it's built. The relatives, which other words are relatives to it. Those are usually words that are connected to the base. The history, what's the history of the word? Where does it come from? And the sounds, what sounds are in this word, okay? So I'm just going to give you for example, one of my favorite words, civilization. I will often, as a teacher, pick a key word that drives a unit and spend a lot of time exploring it because it brings so much richness. And actually, when we did this exploration of civilization with my grade 3 class, much later in the year, parents told me they were having an argument at home about the ION ending, and one kid was saying it was SION and one was saying it was TION, and then this one that they'd considered was not a good speller came up and said actually it's ATE and it's ION because it's two affixes, and they said they were just blown away. So this is, it's quite significant learning that can go on in terms of understanding the word. So just take a moment to read this example. The meaning we often get just by looking in a dictionary. And then when we come to look at the history, we see, does the history add anything to the meaning? We hypothesize about a base. And so often we will say, what do we think the base of that word is, which is the part that actually gives that word meaning? And as children get better at this and they get to know what the affixes are, and particularly when they get to know what the suffixes are, they become very astute at hypothesizing the base. And we learn a system where we use the base to build the word. So we would say civil. Civil is CIVIL, but we would always say civil. The base, we say it as the full word, and then we actually tap out or spell out the affixes. So I might say to kids, well, how do you think this word is built? Who would like to give a hypothesis? And somebody might get up and they might say, I think it's civil plus ISE, and then we say slash the E. Why do we say slash the E? Because in English, when you have the E there and it's followed by a vowel, you take the E out of the spelling. But the actual suffix is ISE. The next suffix is ATE. So there's 3 suffixes on this. Civil is what gives the word its base meaning. Then we add the suffixes ISE slash the E, ATE slash the E plus ION. And the kids learn how to build up the words in these chunks, the base plus the affix, okay? That's probably the most difficult part. When we're thinking of words that are related to it, this is coming back to the idea of patterns that somebody brought up earlier, that we're thinking about the relationship being through the base, because that's what gives the word its meaning. And when we come to the word matrices, you can see how easy it is to build up those relative words. But we might ask the children which words do they think, because it's inquiry, which words do you think are related to civilization? And I had a situation where somebody said citizen. And that just provoked a whole other inquiry. I said, well, does it have the same base? No, but citizens live in civilizations. Okay, go and do your investigation in that. And they came back and they realized that city and citizen and citizenship were all related, and that there was a connection between civilian and citizen, but they didn't have exactly the same meaning. So it became very interesting. Okay, the history of the word, I will show you the resource that helps us with that. And I don't know if you think, but I think that the history adds a level of sophistication to the meaning of the word that we don't get from a regular dictionary. And then we think about the sounds, maybe the sounds that are different. So we've got C, and C can be hard or soft. Why do we think it's soft? And often we'll just ask for a hypothesis. And if we don't get one, we'll say, well, let's look at a bunch of words. So we might put some words out like cattle and cake and civil and clarity, and we'll put out a whole bunch of words that begin with C, and kids will start to notice that when C is followed by an I or an E, it's soft. But when it's followed by a U or an A, it's hard. And they will start to see their own patterns and make up their own rules. Okay, so that can come out quite organically through this process. So this is the amount of work you can do with one word. But spending that amount of time with one word not only just develops the process of thinking, it also, in the context of this unit, this transdisciplinary unit, helps us to really understand what it is we're exploring in the unit. So it's more than just word work. It's actually comprehension. It's actually conceptual understanding. And then from this, the children become interested and they want to go off and investigate their own words. My favorite, I wish I had to show it to you, but my favorite was doing a unit on space. And the kids really got into it. And one of the kids got so excited. He said he found that astronaut was a double-based word. And he said, do you know what an astronaut is? It's a star sailor. And then these 2 little boys, they set off in this whole investigation, and they came up with all the words that had astra in them and all the words that had naught in them. And they would ask me, beg me to come in at lunchtime so they could continue this work because they were so excited about it. So there's it really, they get interested and excited by it. That's one of the reasons I love it. So little summary, and I'm going to pause. The base is what gives the word its original meaning. You can have bound bases, which don't have any meaning if they're not contained within the word, and free bases, which have meaning as words in their own right. And a few words have double bases, like the example I've just given you. So I'm just going to pause, give you a chance to process before we leap in and have a go. What connections are you making? What questions do you have? What are you now curious about? What's interesting to you? Yeah, Diana, that is a really good point. For students who are already proficient in the language and students who are just learning it. So for students who are already proficient in the language, they will tend to make connections very quickly and want to go on and discover their own words. But the simple process of the base plus affixes, the kids who are learning the language will very quickly want to make attempts at that. And we can work with very simple words. When you see the word grids that are coming up, I think that will also give you a little bit more insight into that. But it's an interesting question. There's a lot of organic differentiation that comes through this. And sometimes we might sit with kids who are learning the language and look at the word structure together while other kids are doing it independently or in partnerships. The example that I give you, civilization, we did that whole through as a class together. And then I said, who wants to go on and investigate their own word, and who wants to sit and do another one with me? So there's different ways we can get to it. I used to get really excited about Latin as well, Lupita. It seems odd with a dead language, but when I went to learn Spanish, it was actually quite easy because I had that Latin base behind me, and I could see the connections a lot more quickly than people who didn't have that Latin base behind them. So it does help especially with the Romance and Germanic languages that are connected. How to in a meaningful way? Yeah, that's a good question too, Sandra. I mean, what I've found is that, again, like I said, just starting a unit by exploring some of the big words in the unit gives them an opportunity to explore the meaning of the unit, and they start to see that the words are important. It's not just vocabulary that they have to learn. It becomes like living to them. And I was quite surprised when I started doing this that particularly boys got really interested in it. And I think it's because we positioned it from a scientific, like we're going to carry out a scientific investigation, we're going to be word scientists. And we put them into groups when we first started doing this. And we said, here, we're going to do this all together. And then now we're going to do it in a group. But you can choose the word, or if you want us, we can explore a word that's to do with the topic, or you can just explore a word that's of interest to you. So it's invitational to them. And if a boy comes along and he says, I want to explore the word, I don't know, soldier, might be something that I remember when we were doing ancient civilizations, some boys were interested in. That's fine. It's fine. Because it can be any word they like. It's not, here's a vocabulary list and we have to work through it. So what we learn is that the affixes change the structure of the word, change the meaning of the word, and change this part of the speech of the word. So this is the grammar that can come in through this as well. We learn that prefix is added before the base and suffix is added after the base. By the very nature of this itself, fix meaning add to, pre meaning before, and suff meaning after. So adding to before and adding after, adding to after. So in itself, there's a little tiny word study there. So some kids got really interested into the meaning of affixes because they actually started to realize that some suffixes like ion are noun forming, and some suffixes like ly are adverb forming, and some suffixes like ed are verb forming. And so that then actually helped them to visually differentiate not just how the word looked, but what role the word was playing in a sentence. Yeah, exactly, Deanna. It's like we're figuring out words because we're looking at the meaning, we're looking at how the word is built, and we're looking at the job the word does. So it's not just a list of vocabulary. Yeah. So exactly, you've got it. So we're going to try. We're going to try one. So I'm going to show you one as a demonstration, and then you're going to do one together, and then you're going to make one. Okay, so again, for those of you who didn't manage to catch it the first time, we're going to open these three. So there's three separate ones, even though he's sharing it, Luis is sharing it So there's 4 in that list. So the ones you want are etymology online. That's what we will use to look at the history of a word. You want the Neil Ramsden, because that's where we will build the word grids. And we want the Padlet, because that's where you will see some examples that were made the last time I did this, and you can add your own examples. And hopefully we can share them on the Live Curious site. And then you've got an automatic resource. Okay, and any online dictionary might be useful for you as well. So what I usually do is I just have all the tabs set up, and you can also shrink the zoom so that you can see the tabs and see the zoom at the same time, or you can just listen when you're over having an explore. Okay, so don't panic if you can't get them all open, but it's helpful. But the one that you absolutely do want to make sure you open is the Neil Ramsden one, because you are going to make a word matrix. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so this is an example of education. Okay, so I think about, what does the word mean? All right, so you can either just tell me, or you can go look it up in your online dictionary. What do you think that word means? Education. Hopefully I've picked one that we've all got some idea about. Any hypothesis on what the word means, or do we need to go to a dictionary and check it out? That would be wonderful. I think that's what Will was talking about earlier, an enlightening experience. So we could collaboratively create a definition based on what we've read and what we all think. Okay. I just picked this one, is from the Cambridge Online Dictionary, but I changed my mind when I look up the history, because it's interesting. Okay, so then we say, how is the word built? So who would like to hypothesize how the word is built? What's the base? What's the affix? Can you make a word sum? What plus what plus what might be the construct of education? How it's constructed.
Or
okay, so Miss Yara is saying edu plus cation. Okay, now as a teacher, that would tell me something about a child, that they don't know an awful lot about affixes. Okay, Deanna is now telling me it's ATE plus ION, which tells me that Diana knows a little bit more than Ciara about how words are built. And so therefore, from that differentiation, I might decide what I'm going to suggest that Diana does, while I work with Chiara or other people like Chiara on here. Let's look at what the affixes there are, so that we can support them into that. Okay, but it doesn't matter. Like, every suggestion is valid, because then you would go back to the kid and you would say, okay, what made you say that? What was it that gave your brain that idea? Explain your thinking, right? Okay, so it's an interesting one. Here's my hypothesis. That's it. And then I started to think, is it educ, or is it duck? E plus duck? I don't know. And then I started to get interested, because I never really thought about it before. Okay, so that's what I started to think. So my thinking started to progress. And the point is, at this stage, it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. What's important is that we're thinking about this whole construct, that words are built from a base that has meaning plus affixes. We can then pull in various resources, list of affixes, other things to sort that out, figure it out, but we're just teaching a basic construct there. Okay, what other words are related to it? Here, pop up in the chat. What other words are related to education? Now we're thinking about the meaning, the base of the word, whether we think it's educ, whether we think it's edu, whether we think it's duk. That's what gives the word meaning. Which other words would be its relatives? Okay, educate, educator. Yeah, there's a few more. Okay, so these are the words that could be related from it. I wouldn't do that with kids. I would do that with the word matrix, which I'm going to show you next. Okay, what is the history of the word? So I want you now to go to Etymology Online and search for education and see what you can find out about the history of the word. Okay, I'll do it with you. Okay, so on this lovely site, which is a completely free site, which has been set up by an amazing enthusiast, we can find out that education is, and kids will say to me, what does this mean here? And I'll go, it means noun, because this is a naming word. Oh, it comes from the French, and then the French came from the Latin, and it's a stem of educar, see, educate. So we then, okay, what is this? This is a link. So we're going to open it, see if it gives us more information. So we're now going through a research process. So we're thinking about research skills. So obviously I do this level with about third grade children. I know some people who do it with second grade children, but this level is you can do it together with younger children, but third grade children can actually manage this by themselves. Obviously not the second language learners. That's where they need a bit more support. But this part, it's actually really exciting and interesting to kids, and very exciting and interesting to teachers. So we learn that it's to bring up, okay, from there's connections here. Somebody's saying would be connect to other language, Italian, Spanish, French, lots of connections there. And there we go. It's related to educare, to bring out, lead forth. Now we're getting somewhere. It's not about training at all. The actual original meaning is bringing out what is within. Isn't that much more interesting to us? Okay, so there we go. X out. So my hypothesis that I was tinkling on was starting to be right, because the actual base is come from the PIE root. So the root historically is like the deep meaning of where the word comes from, and the base is what we actually use to form the word. It's the part that we're using right now. So it's from ducere, to lead, so to lead out. So now I have some evidence that my hypothesis E plus duc is possibly the right one. But we've also learned something about the meaning of education, which wasn't there in the dictionary. So it's rich, okay? So this part we do, sorry, I don't know what happened there. This part we do generically have to do with the children until third grade up. They do get the handle of it and they like to do it themselves, and they'll come and tell you if there's parts they don't understand. But it really pushes their vocabulary, and it really pushes their reading as well, because they get so interested in it. Okay, so that's the etymology part. And it's really interesting. Like I support a lot of people now building units, and when we're discussing the concept in the unit or what the unit's about, I often say, let's go and have a look at etymology online, see what this actually means. And it often will change our thinking on what the unit's actually about. So that's the history. And then we could look at, if we wanted to, we could look at what sounds are in the word. And that, again, is interesting. Like, why is it a hard C and not a soft C? Why does the T make the shunt sound? There's other things that you could look at in there in the sounds of the words, but it's not the kind of, okay, it's EDUCATION kind of spelling. It's, let's see what sounds in this word are interesting and why they are the way they are. So it's more curious. And then we might say, okay, what's our hypothesis for the word now? And I might say, well, my hypothesis is E plus duc plus ATE / the E plus ION makes education. And that is the part where the kids really start to form pictures of how the words are built. So this is the really fun bit. You ready for some fun? Okay, so we take a word and we make a word matrix, which you're going to do in a minute. But here's one I might just give to kids when I'm introducing something. So this was actually, we were introducing the idea of decomposition in maths. And we started by, and we did decomposition in maths during a location unit. And we started by considering what place meant. And, you know, so we started thinking about where we are in the world and what our position is in the class, and what our position is, what our school's position is in the surrounding area. And then we took that into maths and we started looking at the position of particular digits in a number. We linked this to composition in music and writing. So this word study was actually integral to all our unit of learning. Okay, but just by once we actually understood that the word, that the base pose meant place, that we'd already be exploring, I could just literally give the kids this word grid and say, what words can you make? So what words can you make? What words can you see in that word matrix? I see you've all got the idea of slashing the E, because I'm not getting decompose it. So that's one little rule. Once the kids learn it, they get it. They understand that in English, when we have an E before a vowel, we just remove the E. And they learn that, and it really helps a lot with their spelling. Oh, positive. That's an interesting one. I don't think I had that one. So that's something that we could then go back and add. Okay. So this is level 1. We give them a word grid and we ask them to make words, and then we might sort out the words. Yeah, I would personally, I would start like this, or I might give them the word sums and ask them to make a word grid from the word sums. But I would usually start with the word grid, and then it can be interesting because we can start sorting out the words into kind of words. And some kids might say, well, these are verbs, or these are nouns, these are plurals, these are singulars. These ones go together because they're about people, and these ones go together because they're about things. Doesn't matter, just helps them to sort. You know, we can say to them, like, how would you sort these words out? Do that a lot. Semantic webs, Lupita, that you are now talking about something that is quite technical. Maybe at the end you could share a little bit more about that if you are feeling brave. Yeah. Okay, but so this is very basic, and I'm going to, would I tell them how to use the matrix? We would already have established that we are using the base for the meaning and adding affixes. I use that technical language even with very young children, even if we're just looking at one word, even if we're just looking at, I don't know, like if we're looking at a very simple word like lunchtime, we'd say lunchtime. It has 2 bases, lunch and time. Okay, so we really understand that the base is the meaning of the word from a very young age, and then we talk about adding on to the word to change the word and build the word. So yeah, so yes, I would go through the structure, that this is the part that gives the word meaning. Go ahead and make whichever words. Sometimes they make words, then they're nonsense, because if you just try to make absolutely every word using absolutely every play, it will be nonsense. But then we go in and we use dictionaries to check the meaning and find out which ones are real words and why. So it's all part of a process. It's not, it's like Will was saying, like there's no like, it's not a perfect process. It's not like if you do this, it will be exactly right. If you do this, you will get some things that will test you or push your thinking further, and you'll think, well, why isn't that a word? Why doesn't that word exist? Because technically it could exist, it could mean this. And that's quite fun for kids as well. Sometimes we get to making up words. Okay, well, because we're a little bit short of time, I'm going to push you on to making the matrix. So as a teacher, to make the matrix, we have to think ahead as to the words that we would want to be on there. Okay, so these are the word sums that I created to make my word grid. So when kids come to make their word grids, they already have to know a little bit about the word sums. That's why it's easier for them to start with a word grid and making the sums, or sometimes I'll give them the sums and say, make a grid, before I would put them into making their own ones. But third graders were very competent at making their own ones. They got very competent very quickly. So you are going to go, I'm not going to do this part because I want you to have some time to play. You are going to go to the word searcher, and maybe lovely Jose would just drop the links in the chat again. It's the Neil Ramsden site. And I am going to show you how to do this. Hang on, I may be in the wrong place. This is a different part of the site, but I'm just going to show you, I've linked the wrong place. I'm just going to show you very quickly how you can use this. So you could put in a pattern if you're interested in patterns. So you could put in, or you could put in a base, but don't get kids to do this because sometimes it comes up with rude words. Okay, so for example, we might be thinking about parties. Okay, so I might say, okay, well, I think the base is part. So I'm just going to see what words come up. And then that gives me, as a teacher, some ideas for words that I might use. But I have to have some word knowledge. I have to have some word knowledge because I need to be able to go and say which words might not have the same base. But most of these look like they were. So I could make a massive word grid on using the word part, okay? But I'm sorry, we're actually in the wrong part of it's my fault, I've linked the wrong part. So just go back to the main aspect of the site. This is his main site. You go to the spelling microsite and you want the word searcher, okay? No, we don't want the word searcher. We want the mini matrix maker. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. So we want this. I'm just going to pop it in the chat for you now. You want the mini matrix maker. There we go. All right. So where do we run it? So he's given an example here. We're going to run it over there. Okay. So how would I build it? I would make a hypothesis. Okay, so for example, I was doing the word location and I would say, okay, I think the base is lock, and I think that means place or position, right? So we just put what we think the base is and what we think the meaning is here, and then we build our words. Lock plus 8. That's 1. Lock plus, 8 plus ION. There's another one. And lock plus 8 plus OR. There's another one. Okay, so it's very, very simple. You decide, and then you just press here, update. Now, I've not found a way to download them, so if you can, you're better than me. I just do a screen capture, take a picture of it and save it that way. On this Padlet, these are ones that other people who've joined me for a previous session like this have made. So I now invite you to choose a base word and create a matrix. And should you choose to, you can share it on the Padlet by pressing the little red button here and uploading it. You don't have to share it, but I'd like you just to take a few minutes to have a go. So I'm just going to drop the correct link for you in there. Again, you want the mini matrix maker. And then you want to go to running it. It is a great site, and he's had it free for years. And there's lots of other things as well if you want to explore this site. This is the part I use it mainly for, but yeah, it's a great free site. And like I said, once we got into this and I showed the third graders how to do it, they'd do it. And it didn't really matter, you know, if their word grids weren't perfect, because it's the thinking. It's the thinking, the fact that we're thinking about words. And they'd get quite excited then when they come across a new word in a book they were reading. They'd come and they'd say, oh, Miss K, you know, I found this word and I was thinking that maybe it meant this because it looks like its base meaning is this. And so I went to check, and then I thought, well, can I look it up on etymology online? Would you help me? Because I want to know more about this word. And it's just that interest in language. It's a shift in thinking. But there's so much you can teach. Like here, you've got verbs, you've got adverbs, you've got adjectives. You can see joy plus full makes it an adverb. Ly makes it full makes it an adjective. Ly makes it an adverb. So we can bring grammar out of this as well. And it can be grammar that's taught organically out of interest rather than didactically out of a textbook. Okay, so have a go. And if you're keen to share, have a go making a word matrix, have a go exploring the meaning of the word. We've got 15 minutes left. I'm going to give you 7 of them to play. And if you want to put any questions or thoughts up in the chat, if you want to pop on and have a little chat, you're very welcome. I am just, for the purpose of anyone viewing, I'm just going to pop over to the Padlet and just show some of the viewers who I hope would also be encouraged to pop onto the Neil Ramsden site and have a go themselves. Some of the things that teachers have created when they had a go at this themselves. So just to enhance, to do the full process, I really would advocate for 3rd grade up. It works beautifully in middle school. It can be done with any subject area. With younger children, we might take words of interest and give them the grids. We might take word sums and get them to figure out the sums. We might unpack a word together. We can definitely teach very young children. I've definitely taught kids as young as 5 to understand the base plus affix and the patterning of words. So for example, this one, we might be teaching basic counting. Count plus ER is counter. Count plus S is counts, right? That is something that they can do. They can grasp onto that, and they quite like it. We can do it with tapping, with clapping, with all sorts of things. Okay, there's a nice one. Sight, eyesight, sighted. There's a science one. Okay, so they can be very simple, they can be very complex. And I can't emphasize this enough. There's no wrong in it, because we will discover which words are real and which words are not real, and we will uncover lots of confusions and misconceptions about language that we will address through this process, rather than just learning words off by rote. So I'm excited to see if anybody is keen. So somebody has uploaded, so I'm just going to refresh the Padlet and see if that appears. Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. There's some new ones coming on. There's creation. At least Annie Lou is enjoying it. So again, if you only use this to open a unit with, you will see a difference in the way the children think about the unit. You will see the difference in the way the children think about the vocabulary in the unit. even if you just take some unit words and play with them, even if you don't go for the full process. And if you want to learn more about it, go to Pete Bauer's site, and he does run full courses, which are more sophisticated than this, which is just a whistle-stop tour. But I know people have seen this and have gone on and used it in a significant way, just from a little bit of input. So it's interesting. Okay, so we're nearly at the end. Please feel free to continue making your matrices and adding them to the Padlet, or you can also do that afterwards. It's been a very simple, small session, nothing fancy, just me sharing a little personal passion and something that I really found made a difference in my classroom. And I've made many of these matrices for educators that I've worked with as a coach and coordinator, and helped them to start off and kick off units and think this way. And we've just seen a difference in the way kids are excited about language rather than it just being words. So that's it from me. I'm going to just pause and see if there are any questions or comments or thoughts before we end. Yes, Louisa is a great tool for math vocabulary. It's a great tool for science vocabulary, for geography vocabulary, for anything really. And it's just a very simple. Oh, Jill is saying that they've just had 32 teachers complete a 5-week online course with Pete, and they're now looking to grow this into the school approach to spelling. So yeah, no, feel free to contact me if you want some like input or support. But there you go, there's another shout out for Pete. He really is marvelous, and he is, once you do a course with him, you can email him and say, I'm really struggling with XYZ words, and he'll send you some questions for your kids to think about as well. Like for him, it is his life. He just lives and breathes it. We called him the word wizard. We just loved him. So, hopefully give it a go. Just try one. Let me know, tap me on social media. If you're struggling with setting up the first one, or if you want to share, if you want to show what your class has done, I'm always excited to see that. And that's it. To say, it's a very simple little process, and hopefully there's something there for some people. So thank you for joining. Just a reminder of the resources that are there. So Real Spellers is another site where they actually have resources that you can buy. There's like packs that you can buy of word sortings and like word bases and things to use at different grade levels, everything from kindergarten upwards, which the school I was working with did in the end go for this resource. It's quite a complex resource, so we only used parts of it, but you can start with nothing. And I'm a big advocate for starting with free resources, and that's why I think the Neil Ramsden site is just great, because we can create something out of nothing, print it, and we don't need to spend money. But there you go. So those are all the resources that I recommend. That's Pete's site if you're interested to follow him, or write to him. He usually responds. This is me. So in the future, if you want to follow me, these are the sort of things I promote. I work with schools, I create trainings, and I help create events. And I post free stuff. Anything that I can find that's free, that's good quality, is on my Twitter or posted up on my global group. So feel free to join if you're interested in more PD. That's not me trying to sell PD, although I do work with schools. I'm really very passionate about trying to find good things for teachers and helping them on their ways, because not everybody is privileged to work at a school that supports PD. And that's it. That's how you can contact me or join one of the groups if those are the kind of things that interest you. Our Teachers on the Move internationally is for people who move around the world and work in international education, and it's basically about finding jobs. Global Educator Collective started with supporting online learning and is now just a big PLN where people ask questions and share ideas and resources. And PYP Coordinators is very specific to our primary years IB program. So thank you once again for your time. because your time is very precious. So go on, have a cup of coffee, have a little mini micro